All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is where you say good evening. If we could please make sure all your phones are silenced out of respect for what we're about to do here. My name is Brian from 106.3 FM. I want to welcome you to the 87th District State Representative debate between Mr. Chad Shannon, the challenger, Mr. Rick Nelson, the incumbent. We are streaming live on my personal Facebook page and the station Facebook page, also on Hometown TV 13. We have a set of rules. I'll be as brief as I can. I can tell you that everyone involved here on the stage has signed that they understand the rules and regulations, and they are willing to respect the rules and regulations. There will be a total of 7 people up on the stage. You will have our 4 people asking the questions from our panel. You will have both candidates and you will have myself. Now, normally we would have a lighted time clock, but the moderator forgot the remote to it, so we will have a timekeeper. We've got Travis Moody down front, and at 10 seconds, within 10 seconds at the end of every time, there will be a bell that sounds one time, Travis, giving the candidates signification that they are 10 seconds before they have to finish. There will be another 2 bells when it's done. There we go. I have met with both candidates. We have flipped a coin to see who will be introducing themselves first, and we'll tell you about that once the candidates get on stage. These are the 4 people who will be asking the questions, and I'll take this time now to introduce them and then bring all our candidates on stage. So, from stage extreme left here, we have stage right to you, but it's on the panel at stage left. Sir, your name? This is Pastor Mark Elkins, and?
You just said my name. My name is Mark Elkins. I'm the pastor of Lights Church. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. We also have Julia Heron.
My name is Julia Heron. I was born and raised in Middlesboro, coal miner's daughter. I'm 25, so I represent the young voter. I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen in my hometown in the years to come.
All right. We have Miss Evans.
My name is Lisa Evans. I reside in Louisville, Kentucky with my husband Wallace. He's a small business owner in the community. I have 2 grandchildren and 3 children, and I have served the community for over 40 years at the Bell County Public Defender's Office.
And Miss Pat Bingham.
Pat Bingham, Bell County, born and bred. I'm a member of the Pineville City Council and a charter member of the Bell County League of Women Voters and a political junkie.
All right. Panelists, if you would bring your microphones closer to you so that everyone is able to hear you. Thank you very much. And just if you would, just for the sake of making sure everyone can hear you, say your first name, please.
My name is Mark Elkins. Raise your hand if you can hear me.
Okay. Julia, please.
Julia.
Lisa.
Lisa.
And Pat. Okay. Can everybody hear our panelists? All right. Thank you very much for your patience. I'd now like to introduce our 2 gentlemen who will be telling you about themselves, answering questions from our panelists, and once they get up here, we'll go over the rules. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, this is your opportunity to support your candidates. If the 2 candidates would please come up on stage. All right. Now the gentlemen are going to sit just as I go over the rules here. We've given them the choice of either a stool or a chair here. Gentlemen, if you would, before we get started, please test your microphones. Make sure they're in working order.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear both of the candidates?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So each candidate will have a 2-minute introduction. We flip the coin in the back, and Mr. Shannon will be going first when it comes to the introductions. After Mr. Nelson's had his introduction, we will then start again with Mr. Nelson and the questions being asked, and it will go back and forth in that order. Each person asking the questions will take their turn asking one question at a time, and they will be each answered by each candidate. So Mark will have a question, and Rick will answer one, and Chad will answer the same question. Now, if in their answers they mention either the opponent's name or my opponent, there will be 1 minute for rebuttal. Both of the men understand this. The time clock, again, will be handled by Travis Moody down front. There will be a bell at 10 seconds, no matter how long the length of time is, whether it's 2 minutes or 1 minute. And at the end of the 10 seconds, there will be a double bell telling you your time is up. My role, if you go over your time, I will do my best to not interrupt your thought, but if I hear you pause, I will then say your time is up. Now, Mr. Jacob Roan, this is Jacob's opportunity to shine, and I want to say a big thank you to the Bell Theater. Let's have a hand for the folks at the Bell Theater. We are allowing the audience to ask questions. Here's how we're doing this. Jacob has a clear tub. It has pens and it has 4x6 note cards in it. You can, if you choose, for the next 30 minutes, he'll pass these out, they'll go down the rows here. If you are interested in asking a question, I am only going to choose 3 questions from the audience. Both of the candidates know that none of these questions are of a personal attack nature. These questions are about the issues. Okay? Here are the issues that you can ask questions about, that our panelists are asking questions about. Roads and transportation, taxes, abortion, law enforcement, veterans issues, marriage equality, ethics, drugs and the drug epidemic, teachers and education, leadership, jobs, and industry, including other issues germane to the position, and this is the same topics that those in the audience will be able to ask. Once all the questions have been answered, all of them, including those of the audience, there will be a closing statement by both of the candidates. That's 2 minutes long. Now, here's your part, the audience. We appreciate everyone who is listening and watching on television and on the internet. Those in attendance, there are supporters of Mr. Shannon and supporters of Mr. Nelson. If you want to support them by your applause, I would appreciate it if you wait till they are finished with their thought. If everybody is in agreement with that, you may clap for both of your respective candidates now. Also, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate both of you. To get up on the stage in front of people and a viewing audience does take a degree of bravery, and I'm very grateful to both of you for that. So, if you are ready, we will begin with Mr. Shannon giving his open introduction to you. Mr. Shannon. And again, before we get going, I want to say that both of the gentlemen have agreed to the rules and regulations, and they are here to talk about issues. Okay? And with that said, Mr. Shannon, thank you very much for your time. If you'd like to give your opening statements, please feel free to do so. You have 2 minutes, sir, starting now.
All right, thank you, Brian. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chad Shannon, and I appreciate you guys coming out tonight to be involved in this process. I served 10 years in the Marine Corps. And during that time, I witnessed men and women who laid down their life for the political process for us to be involved. So whether you're for me or for Rick, I appreciate you getting involved. I'm a small business owner. I desire to grow and hire more employees. But we are being held down currently by the taxes and regulations in the state of Kentucky that hinder us from growing in business. As a father, one of my biggest concerns is that statistically, there's a strong chance that my wife and I could be raising our grandchildren in the near future. On the other hand, we also have the fear that if they succeed and they move off and go to college, that they may not return. There's no opportunities for them to return to. We have friends that make a decision every month on whether they should buy food or medication. We have friends in Bell and Harlan County that turn on their faucet in the mornings and pray the water comes out. We currently travel on unsafe roads and unimproved surfaces. Again, we have friends raising their grandbabies because their children have fell victim to the drug epidemic. So before we stand up here tonight and try to make this election about us, I just want to let everyone know that this election is about you. And it's about who you choose to lead us forward in the future. Both of us have different ideas politically, but both of us are honorable men. And I just ask that when you go November 8th, I ask that you hear out both of our plans and pick who you believe is going to lead us into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Mr. Nelson.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one for coming. Also, particularly, I always introduce my wife. I'm not going to ask her to stand today, but as you know, if you are a public figure, a pastor, a teacher, a coach, you have to have someone to support you, and I'm very fortunate that I do have that. I want to tell you a little bit about myself because some of the issues we're going to be asked to answer questions on. I was actually born in Harlan County in a coal camp called Black Star. My dad worked in the mines, and he actually worked in coal mines for 35 years. And in 1959, he got hurt in the mine, so we had to leave the coal camp. So you know what we did? We moved to another coal camp that was no longer in use. We bought a house for $425. But times were hard back in the late 50s. Any of you my age, you probably remember that. So we borrowed that $425 and paid for that house in payments, First State Bank. My mom had to get a job at Retail Grocery in Ensall, Kentucky. She worked 10 hours for a total of $3. And that was for the entire day. So we come from a family that knows the value of hard work and hard times. I went to Blackmont Elementary. I went to Old Bell County High School, Cumberland College, and Eastern Kentucky University. I decided to become a teacher because I wanted to get into the coaching and helping the young people. So my first job teaching was at RJ Elementary School. And then I went to the middle school. And then went to the recovery school where we have a lot of our troubled kids. In the meantime, I met and married Annetta. We've been married 40 years. And as some of you can watch Facebook, we had our first grandchild about 2 months ago, Willie Nelson Landon is his name. So that's a good thing. So I appreciate you being here and hope you will consider me for your vote this coming November. Thank you.
All right, now the gentlemen can choose to sit or stand whenever they like, depending on how they want to present themselves. We will start with Pastor Mark Elkins and the first question. And you can direct that to both of the gentlemen, but Mr. Nelson will be answering first.
Thank you. And thank you for taking my question. Gentlemen, if you could change anything in our community, if you could change anything, what would it be? If you could change anything with all the resources that you would need to make that change, what would that change be? Why would you change it? And then how would you get us united behind that change?
And that's with unlimited money?
Sure.
All right.
That's great.
You know, I think the biggest problem that we have anywhere is our drug problem. And I believe as far as the drug problem goes, there's 3 tiers to that stool. And that's first of all, it's education, then you have to have enforcement, and then you have to have treatment. If we had unlimited money, then I think a drug treatment facility in this area would be probably the best use of that money. Because it doesn't matter what you do. You can go over to the jail, you can go to the sheriff, state police, and almost everybody they arrest is due to something involving drugs, and usually it's on theft. So if I have unlimited money, it's going to be a drug treatment center.
That's a great question. With unlimited resources, I believe that the same with our drug problem, but I believe it starts with our youth. And if we had an unlimited budget, I would love to have a recreation center here that had a swimming pool and not necessarily mimicking a YMCA, but something that we can get our children here involved as a young age and teach them about drug rehabilitation. Last night we had a coalition meeting that we brought someone in from Frankfurt, and he discussed some of the money that is available, and that's some of the resources that we plan on tapping into because there's grants available right now. This isn't a fairy tale. This is money that's available, and if we write the grants, we can get that money down here, but it dries up quickly, so we got to act very fast. But I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old growing up in this community, and my 9-year-old, when we was praying the other night, mentioned that her friend can't go outside because there's needles around, and that broke my heart. So I agree with Rick on this, and I would start it from a young level. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. The next question will be from Ms. Julia Herron.
Thank you. Earlier this year, Governor Matt Bacon began a series of drastic budget cuts in the amount of millions of dollars from the education programs across the state, which the Supreme Court later overruled. But with college becoming more and more of a reality for low-income families, it's an issue to cut a lot of these programs that are making that possible. So my question is, where do you stand on education funding, and what do you plan to do to help make education more affordable for students from these low-income families?
That's a great question because education is key. We cannot stop funding K through 12 education, and some of the universities that, Governor Bevin got this twisted a little bit on him. He didn't defund the classroom to student. He didn't touch the classroom. He touched the academics at the highest level of the guys that are making $800,000, $400,000 a year. So that was what his intention with cutting, was based off of that, and then the news media got a hold of that. But to answer your question, I don't believe that we need to cut funds because I grew up poor, and I joined the Marine Corps to pay for my education. And I had to do whatever it took because I had 3 sisters. My mom was a teacher, and my dad was a machine shop supervisor. So we didn't have a spoon growing up in our mouth, and we had to think about ways outside the box so we could pay for our education. But I do believe that education is extremely important for us to come out of poverty and move forward into the future.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, you have 1 minute.
Well, the governor did make some controversial cuts, including 22% cuts for colleges and universities, the Kentucky School of the Blind, the Kentucky School of the Deaf, the Kentucky Department of Military Affairs, and our local youth service centers. That was all included in 22% cuts. And the Attorney General decided to sue and found out that if there's not a budget deficit, the governor is not allowed to cut money that has been appropriated by the General Assembly. So I'm for of course, being a lifelong teacher. Teachers are underpaid and overworked, we all know that. But the money that went back to the colleges didn't go into the salaries of somebody making $800,000 or $400,000. They went to the professors that were making $30,000 and $35,000. So the money that's going to be put back into the university's budget this Thursday is going to really help. So thank you.
All right. Ms. Evans, your question for both candidates, please.
Thank you, Brian. Gentlemen, I'm very happy to hear both of you say that the drug epidemic is your number one concern for our community. It's also my number one concern. In a 2015 report from the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Council, Bell County's overdose fatality rate ranked number 2 per capita in the state. In a national study, which was produced for data over a 16-year period, Bell County is ranked number 5 in the nation for those deaths. According to the Kentucky Agency for Substance Abuse Policy, they do recommend a 3-pronged approach to the current addiction crisis, and that is prevention or education, treatment, and law enforcement. In an article published yesterday in the Courier Journal, Bell County was ranked number 6 in the nation for the highest incarceration rates in 2014. It would seem that we have the law enforcement or accountability factor covered here. I appreciate your all's response about bringing the treatment center here, and so that covers that factor. As to the education of the pension factor. Would either of you be in support of some sort of mandate or programs within our schools, full-time, regarding this issue?
Mr. Nelson, you have 1 minute.
Well, I think the schools are doing all they can right now. I know that in each health book, either at the elementary level or high school level, there is a unit on drug prevention and the dangers of drugs. I know that between grades 4 and 8, they have that. In high school, you have it. And they use a lot of resources. They bring in Operation Unite. But you know, one of the things that if we could get the faith-based community involved, I think that would help a little bit. And we do have to some extent. But it takes a lot of people, particularly when you have an individual that feels that they don't have any hope and they're going to go rock bottom. So I think the education part is good. I think we ought to redouble our effort for the school systems to do whatever we need to do. If we need to bring in more people, that's fine. But you know, if you put everybody in a team and they have a talk, I don't know how effective it is. I think it's a classroom teacher and help they can get. I think that's more effective.
Mr. Shannon, you have 1 minute.
I don't disagree with anything Rick's saying, but we're already putting things into play right now. I've got a guy named Dr. Robert Goforth that volunteers his time. He's a pharmacist and has 6 or 7 pharmacies throughout southeastern Kentucky. He's come in, he's already spoke to Pineville, not just in the gym, but he goes classroom, and he's putting a lot of effort. We need a community that's going to stand up and get behind this fight with us. Also, on the other hand, things that we could do is we could recruit industry. Idle hands are the devil's work. If we're not going to have jobs, and when jobs are very low, every study I've read is jobs are high, drugs are low. Drugs are high, jobs are low. That's something that you know, me or Rick needs to be recruiting industry to try to get industry in here. So we've got to fight this, and it's a community effort, and we've all got to get behind it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Nelson, because he mentioned your name, would you like to rebut? Okay, thank you. All right. Ms. Bingham?
Thank you. I want to move to another concern in the state where taxes and funding is paid, pensions. It is reported that the Kentucky pension systems are in financial difficulty. Matter of fact, a financial crisis. How would you, if Mr. Nelson goes back to the representative's house, or Mr. Shannon goes as a new person, how would you address the issue of pensions, and what would you be willing to do to address this crisis of retirees in Kentucky?
Mr. Shannon, 1 minute, please.
That's a great question. Well, first off, you got to have transparency. And in the several bills, I think the latest one was 2014, there was a bill about the retirement being non-transparent. And the Democrat led that force to where, you know, we don't even know really how the retirement split up at the political level. But I do know that the politicians are funded at 100%, and that our teachers are probably 40%, and our state workers are at 17%, and I just think that's unsad. And I'm not saying my opponent's the only one to blame on that, but I think we are looking out for the wrong people. Service is not about yourself, it's about serving others. And I think that you have to have a transparent display to figure out where our retirement system's going and how we're funding it, and remove the 2-pot system and put it back into 1 pot so we can all be a level playing field.
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute, please.
Well, we do have 4 or 5 different retirement systems. We have one for teachers, and we do have one for state workers and for school board employees. This past year, we were able to put a fully fund plus give extra money to each of the retirement systems. And also, we put money in the budget to do a full audit to find out why that the individual retirement systems are not performing on what they should be. But the boards for all the retirement systems are independent, and they take care of their own investments. And by the way, I'm not in the legislative retirement system, so I want to make sure that that comes out. But the thing that hurt the retirement systems the worst, I believe, in 2007, 8, and 9, they lost nearly $3 billion in investments. And as far as the General Assembly, money was down for us too. So if you don't have the money, it's hard to make the extra fund.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Elkins, your question, sir.
Thank you. How will you improve, after teaching school for 18 years, I've got a question about education. How will you improve the public education without spending more of the money and cutting the bureaucracy, red tape that has a tendency to make it more difficult for the principals and the teachers to accomplish their job of educating their youngins?
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute.
Well, there is a lot more red tape than there used to be. But one thing that the Kentucky Education Reform Act did do, and it gave the power for the curriculum to the site-based councils. Now, some of the site-based councils, they do not want that responsibility. But each site-based council at each school has the ability to work on schedules, on personnel, and on a lot of regulations that they may feel that's tying them down.
Mr. Shannon, 1 minute.
I believe what you have to do is you have to put more money back in the classroom. I think we have Common Core requirements as Chuck and my mom, my sisters, they're all teachers and principals. And they have a standard that basically just teaches our kids how to take a test. We need more practical application in that. I don't think that our government should be running our education. I believe that you remove some of that money and give it back to the teachers so my mom's not pushing a buggy down Walmart with Kleenexes and pencils and things like that. Our teachers are a prized asset if we would let them be one. But right now, the government hinders everything they teach in the classroom, and it's to the point where it's getting ridiculous. America is supposed to be a free country where we have teachers who aspired since they were children to be a teacher. That's what they wanted to do so they could get into the classroom and teach the way they wanted to teach. I don't think the federal government or the state government should be mandating what they teach in the classroom. Thank you.
Ms. Herron, your question.
Thank you. As their mission statement indicates, Planned Parenthood provides reproductive health care, education, information, and outreach to nearly 5 million men and women and adolescents in a single year alone. Some of these services include testing and treatment of STDs, Pap tests, and breast exams, which have been critical in the early detection of cancers, various cancers. And earlier this year, as we've seen before, there was a huge movement to defund Planned Parenthood. And as someone who has personally benefited from those routine exams administered by this program, it is worrisome to me that I may not be able to afford exams if this were to happen, like so many other men and women my age. Though you may or may not actively support abortion, a service also provided by Planned Parenthood, are you willing to support the defunding of an entire program that has single-handedly assisted in the early detection of cancer for the sake of eliminating just one of the many services they provide? And if yes, what can you do or say to reassure voters who can't afford those routine exams that proper reproductive health care will be both accessible and affordable?
Mr. Shannon, 1 minute, please.
Well, you know, I have 2 daughters and 3 sisters, so I believe women's health is extremely important. But the legislation that came through started in the Senate this time, several of them, and it's been a long time. Greg Stumbo's kept it off the House floor successfully for almost 10 years, the discussion of abortion. It came over as a Senate bill. The House blocked it. When I say my opponent voted for abortion, it's not voted for abortion, it's blocked it to bring it back to committee so they could draw up on it. Now, the issue I have with that is obviously the concern of, you know, we lose 9 a day in the state of Kentucky. And I'm not for abortion. But the women's health issues are an issue to me, but I don't believe that taxpayers should fund an abortion. There's no way that I think that's okay, and I will not vote for that.
Mr. Nelson. 1 minute, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm not for abortion either, but money for Planned Parenthood does not originate in Frankfort, Kentucky, and it originates in Washington, D.C. If you remember last year, there was a lot of controversy over body parts that Planned Parenthood sold, and there was, our federal lawmakers said they were going to defund it. So guess what they did? They put over $500 million in the federal budget, and all of our federal delegations voted for that except for one. So that goes to tell you that Planned Parenthood, to them anyway, in Washington DC, our own federal delegation, has some value. But the law is very clear. No tax money can be used for abortions, period.
Ms. Evans, you're next. If you would pull your microphone towards you just a little bit more, very soft-spoken. Okay.
In a 2015 report from the Kentucky Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, the Kentucky Office of Drug Control Policy and the Agency for Substance Abuse reports that one of their goals is to reduce the stigma associated with drug and alcohol addiction. Given the statistics that I just provided you in regards to where Bell County stands with this disease of addiction, and considering the risks to all of us, not just the addict, which include a growing threat of HIV and hepatitis, would you be in support and work to facilitate a needle exchange program for Bell County?
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute, sir.
We have had a lot of discussion on the needle exchange program. There's only 6 counties in Kentucky, including Grant County, which is in a very conservative area of northern Kentucky. I think it's something that we need to have a discussion on, because here's what's happened. If you are an addict and you shoot up, according to the stats that I saw, you are going to use that needle 24 times. And you're going to have a friend that's going to use that 5 or 6 times too. The only thing I think you would need to be careful about, if you did something like that, you would need to have a one-on-one exchange. If an addict comes in and turns in one needle and gets a clean needle, that takes that needle off the playgrounds or anywhere else. But I think we need to have a discussion on it here, and of course our health departments are the one that has to facilitate that.
Mr. Shannon.
Well, when I first heard about this program, I thought it was enabling. And you look at the statistics just show that, and I don't disagree with him on this, the statistics show that Medicare and Medicaid is paying for hepatitis, AIDS, HIV. There's a lot of sicknesses and illness that we're having to pay for in the first place due to the usage of needles. And we have to take a look and at least study this, maybe bring some awareness, because I think that a lot of people feel the same way that I felt in the beginning, that this is enabling an addict. But at the end of the day, the statistics just don't show that. And everywhere that it's been successful. I mean, but we brought up numbers a second ago about how we're highly rated in hepatitis and highly rated in some of those other things. But you have to have a program at the end that when they come in, that we're educating them and not just giving out free needles. That's what I thought it was. It's not a free-for-all. It's you come in, get a 10-minute education video, and all right, thanks.
I appreciate both men respecting the time. It's going to be now, before we get to our next question, is Mayor Maiden still here? Okay. Mr. Maiden, would you do us a favor, please? Would you please collect all of the 4x6 cards in the container that I handed Jacob? Thank you very much. Ms. Bingham.
Thank you. I'd like to change our direction just a little and talk about taxes and jobs. Are there changes that could be made in Kentucky's tax code that would make Kentucky more attractive to job-producing businesses? And if so, what changes would you support?
Sorry, Mr. Shannon.
That's a great question. Tax reform is something that we need to happen immediately. 1970 is the last time that we looked at our tax code and revamped it. Now, I heard the other day that the state of Tennessee is changing their bird from the mockingbird to a crane. And I'm not talking about the crane that flies, I'm talking about a crane that builds buildings. And the reason why they do that is they have a tax code that's set up for businesses so they can grow industry, they can hire more people. I mean, I'll tell you, as a small business, it's hard. I mean, I paid last month in taxes enough to where I could hire 3 employees, develop them, probably as an entry-level job, and pass them off to someone else for them to have a professional career. So So I believe that it's immediate that it needs to happen. We need to have a tax reform immediate, and that's something that we need to talk about in the General Assembly as soon as we get up there, whoever is elected.
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute, sir.
A few years ago, we had a tax commission that came up with a lot of recommendations. But what they found out is if they give you a tax break, somebody that's never been taxed before is going to have to pay taxes for the first time. There's 2 pieces of legislation, one of them that I filed, one of them Congressman Rogers is going to get ready to file, and that's the Promise Zone legislation. I filed this actually in 2015, right now in 2016. And if you are in the 5.5 county area that's in the Promise Zone, and you are a business that makes $3 million or less, you would be tax exempt from sales tax. Also, your employees would get a credit for their Kentucky tax. Now, that's similar to what Senator Paul wants to do. We do understand that Representative Rogers or Congressman is going to do something, and Washington can take care of that too. But can you imagine the growth that would occur here in the Promise Zone? And we've got 8 more years of Promise Zone designation.
All right, Mr. Elkins, the next question, please.
Again, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for your answers and for your honesty and integrity. I have an 8-year-old daughter. I have a 15-year-old son that is a freshman in high school. And we are concerned about this issue. What is your stance on the transgender integration, specifically in the public school system and public restaurants?
1 moment, sir.
That one's a pretty easy one. If you're a boy, you go to the boys' restroom, and if you're a girl, you go to the girls.
Can I tag to that question then? Can I tag something to that question then?
Well,
No.
allow Mr. Shannon to answer, okay? Mr. Shannon?
I mean, that's pretty simple. I don't think anyone in the audience disagrees with that. If you're a boy, you go to the boys' bathroom. If you're a girl, you go to the girls. That's simple. It's a shame, just to use my time, it's a shame that we're having these discussions. They're wasting our taxpayer dollars right now in the state of North Carolina, which ain't our taxpayer dollars, but it's spread over to Kentucky to even have this discussion.
Mr. Elkins, was that to your satisfaction?
Yeah, both were to my satisfaction. Having,
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much. Would you like to redirect the candidates?
yes.
Okay.
In the public school system, if you recognize that there was a transgender having privileges of going to the girls' bathroom, how would you address that situation?
I'll allow Mr. Nelson to answer first on this one because he wanted that to be the first part of his answer. Wait just a minute. Are you okay with that, Mr. Shannon? Okay. Mr. Nelson.
If I were a principal or superintendent, are we assuming that?
I was in your, is there something you can do in your role, or is there influence that you can have in your role?
Well, as far as the, right, I understand. You know, North Carolina passed a law on that, and of course, we could do the same thing. But you know, I don't know if that situation has ever occurred in this area or not, but you know, the principal or the superintendent would have to handle it. What I would do, if I was principal or superintendent, I would say, if you're a girl, you go to the girls' restroom. If you're a boy, you go to the boys, and then face the fallout later.
Mr. Shannon?
I think as a leader, you have to call the parents in and we have to have a discussion. And he's right. I mean, if you're, this is pretty simple to me, I feel like. But I think as a leader, you pull the parents in, everyone has a discussion, and then we iron it out. And I think that's as far as it goes. But as far as a state rep, I'm not sure that would be, in our description to get involved on that level. But, you want to have the principal and teacher's best interest and have their back in all situations. So, but thanks for the question.
Thank you. Ms. Herron?
As a coal miner's daughter and someone who has benefited from the coal industry, I understand the vitally important role that that industry plays in Bell County. However, coal is plainly a dirty energy source, other than just pollution and the hazardous mine that it leaves, that doubles as a hazardous hazardous waste side that needs to be cleaned up, often at taxpayer expenses. The coal companies bear the cost of, or I'm sorry, someone other than coal companies are bearing the cost of this pollution that they're the ones causing. The decline of the American coal industry has been driven by many sources. The regulatory burdens have increased, I know that, but the reality is that coal is the victim of the competition from cheaper natural gas and green energy sources like solar and wind power. Do you agree that coal is a dying industry, and with cheaper alternatives, greener alternatives swiftly on the rise, what can you promise to families of Bell County who rely on coal as a source of income?
Mr. Shannon, 1 minute.
Well, I mean, some of that, on that part was, shaped by the media a lot. I mean, if you think back to Solyndra in 2008, that was the lobbyist for President Obama, and it went belly up. I mean, they spent $500 billion of taxpayer money to try to start new renewable energy resources that aren't less expensive. They're actually triple the price. That's why we're watching our rates go up. But now that we've converted from coal to natural gas and things like that, it takes a decade to get them back. But now me and Senator Smith have talked about situations in other regions that they're using nuclear power, and they're actually powering that with coal. Now, Brandon Smith is the guru on this. He knows all about it, and we've had the conversations. He can tell you the biology or the science behind every moving part of the machine and things that can turn over. But I don't want to give up. I'm a Marine. I'm not going to give up on an energy source that's it's our economy. I don't think we should give up. I think we need to continue to fight and find new ways to use that energy source.
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute.
And I'm going to respectively disagree a little bit with you, because I don't think coal is dead. We still get about 80% of our energy from it nationwide, and about that in Kentucky. The problem we are having now is the EPA is making it very difficult, because coal is hard to mine in East Kentucky. It's more expensive to mine a ton of coal in East Kentucky than it is in West Kentucky. And I think the EPA made a conscious effort to do that, and that's why they have driven out a lot of our medium and small size operators. Now, as far as the renewable energy, that's good if you can afford to buy a turbine, but they're about $17,000. Solar panels are about $20,000. Who can afford to do that? As far as natural gas, do you all remember 10 years ago that natural gas got so high that everyone switched off and got an electric heat pump? What is going to happen is that if coal dies out like it is now, natural gas will be the only game in town. And hold on to your pocketbooks then if you think it's bad now.
Ms. Evans.
Many credible reports have been published regarding the medical benefits of marijuana for diseases such as cancer, PTSD, seizures, anxiety, glaucoma, depression, pain relief, and now some are arguing addiction. Some studies claim that in the 13 states where medical marijuana is legal, there's been a 25% decrease in opioid use and opioid deaths. In addition to the medical benefits, there are also obvious economic opportunities, both from taxes from the sale for personal use, as well as from hemp production, which can be used in making paper, fabric, fuel, body care products, plastics, building materials, just to name a few. Given both the medical needs of this community, as well as the economic needs here in Bell County, what is your position on the legalization of marijuana?
Mr. Nelson, 1 minute. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm opposed to the, like they do in Colorado, where they just have package stores and you go in and get marijuana. However, I think that there is enough research with the medical marijuana, because we have heard testimony in Frankfurt, particularly from veterans, and they go ahead and use the marijuana even though they know it's illegal, but it does help them. And it would seem to me, if you compare a high-powered narcotic compared to marijuana for medical purposes, it seems like to me that that would be something that we really need to have a good discussion on. And I think eventually here in Kentucky in the next few years, you're going to see medical marijuana legal.
Mr. Shannon.
Well, medicinal marijuana is one thing, but when you talk about the putting it across the whole state like they do in Colorado, I disagree with that. And the main reason I do is as a business owner and someone who's trying to target jobs to come to our region to hopefully employ our people, I don't want that to be a concern of theirs. I don't think that we should have, one more thing added to the situation when we're already in an economical decline here. And I believe, some of these jobs that we can target are Colt firearms, and some of these that actually require CNC machinists and some people with some trades to come in here and work. And I don't want to employ people and have to oversell the situation of, we can use medical marijuana and it's okay. Well, it's not. If you're heavy equipment operators and things like that, you can't come to work high. So to me, medicinal marijuana is a completely different subject because the prescription pills, we're having a bigger problem with that than we are, the medical marijuana.
Ms. Bingham, you have the honor of having the last question on the panel.
Well,
This will go to both of them, but Mr. Shannon will answer first.
thank you, and I have 2 questions left, and I know I can't negotiate 2 questions. For Mr. Nelson, I would want to know what he feels was his main accomplishment of his past term for House District 87, Bell and Harlan County. And for Mr. Smith,
Mr. Shannon,
excuse me.
that's okay. It's no problem.
I meant Senator Brandon Smith. For the new candidate, Mr. Shannon, what do you most want to accomplish in House 87 if you are elected?
All right, before we answer, are both of you understanding the question? You're okay with both of that?
That's the same question.
It is the same question, so I want to make sure we're on the same page. Mr. Shannon, you can answer first.
Well, one of my huge concerns as a business owner is the taxes I pay and wondering where they come from or where they go. They go to Frankfurt, and right now it seems that they sit in a golden triangle that we all talk about, and we know they don't return back. I know that because I've driven on the roads. 221 on Straight Creek, there's a caution sign driven right down in the middle. I want to fix our roads. I think our roads are a problem, and everyone in this room pays taxes. We need to have our money returned back to here, and that way we can have roads that are safe, just like we deserve the same thing Lexington and Richmond and some of those places have. So I want to see the taxes returned here, number one. I want to fight hard for that. And number two, we need jobs. We need jobs. That's the number one concern. Basketball season is just like being a legislator. It's a season and a session, and an off season and an off session. Well, we make our money as a state representative in the off session. When we're in the off season where they're lifting weights, we need to be on the phone calling people, asking them to bring their industry in here. I need to be posting on Facebook that I landed at midnight after talking 3 days to people trying to get them down here to employ our people. That's our biggest concern, and that needs to happen immediately.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson.
Well, as far as things that we've done, there's a couple of things I'd like to bring up. First of all, we've been able to bring for the 87th Legislative District a total of $18 million for water and sewer projects. I know that's not very romantic unless you don't have water or clean sewer. Now let me tell you something, that $18 million is more money than Hal Rogers, Mitch McConnell, and Rand Paul brought into the 87th District if you add everything they put together. 3,000 families and about 9,000 people now have clean drinking water or clean sewer because of that. And that's something you can hang your hat on or you can put on your tombstone if you bring more money into Hal Rogers. That we've done that. Also, we've been able to bring almost 2,500 computers to a school. They would not have had those computers before through the data sync program. Unfortunately, Governor Bevin vetoed that, but the value on those was $2.2 million, and that's for our kids, and I proud of that.
Before we get to our questions from the audience, I want to say thank you again to the panelists. This is not an easy job to come up with 3 questions that are going to hit all of the topics. And of course, I thought they did very, very well. Let's go ahead and have a hand for our panelists. These questions are yours. I am picking 3 at random. I am hoping that everyone has adhered to the rules, that there are no personal attacks in this container. You can see that it's clear. I want to be fair to both candidates. Mr. Nelson, at the end of these, will have the last closing statement because Mr. Shannon started. But we will start with Mr. Nelson because he answered the last question. Okay? Okay, this is a big one. Let's see if I can read here. Mr. Nelson, for the counties in the Promise Zone, explain your tax proposal that will help small business hire, give raises, and increase their business and give tax breaks. Yes, you have 1 minute, starting now.
Well, we mentioned this before, but it's going to be similar to what Hal Rogers is going to introduce at the federal level. But if you're a business in the Promise Zone, and that's 5.5 counties, and you make under $3 million a year in gross revenue, then all the sales tax that you would collect as a business, you keep that. That's your money to invest back in the business. If you are an employee of one of these businesses in the Promise Zone, then you would get a tax credit up to $40,000 on Kentucky taxes. So it's a win for the business owner. It is a win for the employer. The cost of it now is $22 million. But can you imagine those businesses? You know, a lot of times we do incentives. By the way, Bell County on the economic development front is getting ready to get a $1 million economic tax incentive for some of the businesses. Now, can you imagine how this is going to help the businesses if it passes?
Because the question was directed at Mr. Nelson, you have the opportunity to answer.
Well, this is a policy question, and I believe exactly like I talked about earlier. Instead of sending our money to Frankfurt and Washington, D.C., for them to make a decision on who gets it when it trickles back down, all we're doing is retaining our money at the business. Now, as a business owner who employs people, I'm going to add 2 to 4 more people on my payroll, so with that money that I get, which stimulates the economy, and it's going to move us forward. So this is something that needs to happen. Me and Rand Paul's talked about this several times and discussed this, and that's the whole philosophy behind it is we keep our money down here as the business owners, we're able to grow, and then that stimulates our economy in return because people's buying more and we're employing more people, so they're going to the stores, they're going to the restaurants, and things like that.
Thank you. Okay, I have chosen the first question. I'm going to allow Mr. Shannon to choose one and Mr. Nelson to choose one so that we keep this fair. If you will just pull something out of there and hand it to me, sir. Thank you very much. All right. Do either of you support Kentucky having a right to work law? Mr. Shannon.
Okay, well, right to work is somewhat understood at a lot of places. Right to work is just giving you the freedom to join the union if you'd like. And a lot of people says, well, you're anti-union if you're right to work. No, I'm not. I'm not anti-job. I want jobs to come to our region. I don't care if they're union or not. I was a Teamster for 3 years. I know exactly what the setup is. Before I joined the Marine Corps, that's what I did. I worked for UPS and I was a Teamster. So to say that right to work is preventing jobs, that's not it. Now, it is preventing jobs for us because we talked to Tennessee. Governor Haslam in Tennessee, Governor Bevin and Governor Haslam had a talk, and they said, what's your last minute? What do you revert to when someone says no to you? And he says, well, I tell them you're not a right to work state. Look, I'm a Marine. I fought for freedom, and I feel like that if you're an employee, you have the right to make a decision on whether you want to be involved with the union and have their protection, which is good, or if you decide that you don't want to have their protection.
All right. Mr. Nelson, 1 minute.
If a facility votes to go union, nobody is forced to join that union. However, if that person that does not belong to the union has a grievance, guess who has to take up for it? It's the union. So the federal government allows them to charge a fee for what it would cost to do that. I think that's only fair. If you're going to take services from somebody, then you should pay your share. Second of all, Kentucky is way ahead of Tennessee on every job indicator. You can look at Site Selection magazine. Kentucky is way ahead. I mean, Tennessee charges, they have sales tax on medicine and food, for God's sakes. People come to Kentucky to get their medicine and their food. Also, if you are a right-to-work state, the family makes $6,000 less per year. Do we want to work for less, or do we want to work better and safer?
All right, so let's take one question, please. Okay? That's okay. All politicians say we need jobs in our area. This is true. But what kind of jobs and how will you get them? Mr. Nelson.
Being a state representative, I think there's two things. First of all, we talk to the economic development cabinet all the time because that's the state level. And we put about $40 million in a budget to the economic development cabinet, and they get $100 million in tax incentives every year. And as I said earlier, Bell County's already been approved for a $1 million tax incentive that the fiscal court has to apply for a Power Plus grant to kick that in. People want a factory, but the factories are going to Honduras, they are going to Mexico, and there's nothing Frankfurt can do about that. Washington, D.C. could do something about that if they would do a tariff on all these factories that are leaving and going to these foreign countries. I mean, they're making 10 cents an hour, $2 an hour. How can the American workers compete with that? So that's one of our biggest problems. But the Economic Development Cabinet is a group that I've got a lot of confidence in.
Mr. Shannon.
I don't believe that the government are the ones who create jobs. I believe it's the hardworking Americans that coin an idea, that decide, hey, that's a good idea, I want to go out and create something. Now, there's a lot of industry that's going right now that's moving. You got firearms, you got drones, we got a lot of things we can target. Now, the difference in my leadership on what I'm going to do is I'm going to contact all the guys that I served with in the Marine Corps that are now CFOs of organizations that have factories in New Hampshire and California, and I'm going to tap into that resource because everything is about personal and professional relationships. And when I contact these guys that I served with in combat, we could potentially lay our life down for this country. We begin to respect and love each other. And I've already talked with some people. There's also some things that the Pentagon puts out. There's government contracts that we can tap into, and those are immediate. We can tap into those, but they're short term. They're only 3 to 5 years, but that puts us working immediately so we can, in the meantime, I can recruit other industry. But I'll be on the phone every day making phone calls. I'll be in the legislation trying to draft legislation that lowers our taxes and gets us into an environment where we're, sorry, I could keep going, but I don't want to be rude.
I appreciate both of you very much. Now, I want to say thank you to both men. And again, the coin flip earlier allowed Mr. Shannon to start off his introduction. So Mr. Nelson will have the last say as far as his closing. Mr. Shannon, you have 2 minutes.
The past 10 months has been an absolute blessing. It's opened my eyes to the region and to some great people. I've had the opportunity to sit down at tables and talk to people. And we've knocked on a lot of doors. I think we hit 12,000 doors. And that's nowhere near enough. I mean, I'm trying to get out and talk with people. I want to thank my wife, Robin, who's out here, who's put up with it the whole entire time while we're out here. But it's been a complete honor to get to know each and every one of you guys. I've learned about the problems y'all face. I learned that it's hard to make it out there, and that we feel like we don't have a voice. And I've asked y'all since January if you would allow me to be your voice. I will go to Frankfurt, and I will fight as hard as I can for you. I've never failed at anything I've done, and I'll work as hard for you as anybody else would. And that's my promise to you. I'm not promising to get up here and saying that we're bringing a $4 billion factory that's going to come in, but I promise I'll work hard for you. And if you call me, I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I will be there for you. If you call my cell phone, I will be there. And if it's something related to the State House or something that's in my scope, and even if it's not, I'll try to get you to the right people. But I do care about this region. It doesn't matter where I was born. I care about this region because this is where I'm at. This is where I'm building my family, and my kids go to school here, and our teachers have been great to us. And I'm honored that y'all allow me to be a part of this community. And for that, I just want to say thank you. And if y'all would remember me, November 8th, I won't let you forget it, or I won't let you regret it. We will go up there and we will work as hard as we can with a Republican governor, a Republican Senate, and soon to be a Republican House. I think that we need my voice to be up there. I build relationships. Everything is about relationships, guys. You can't stand up here and talk about Hal Rogers and then expect Hal Rogers to help us when we need help. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, 2 minutes.
Well, it's been an honor to be here tonight, and it's been an honor to be your state representative. There's a lot of things that you do to be a state representative. I mentioned the water projects, $18 million. I mentioned the computers we brought in. We've returned $7 million to the Bell County Fiscal Court, $1.3 million to Middlesboro, $605,000 to the city of Pineville in cash, and project after project we've tried to help with. But you know, at the end of the day, what people are concerned about is if you call them, will you call them back? And I think that's the thing that I enjoy doing the most. There was a grocery store up in Harlan County that was about to close because they were getting ready to get a $10,000 fine. They called me first. They said, we didn't know who to call, but someone said to call you. Well, we got that taken care of, and they saved $9,600. Had an older couple over at Middlesboro that had a $10,000 debt that they thought that they owed, that they called me. We found out they didn't know it after all. It's the personal touch that you have for people is what they remember. I get over 1,000 phone calls to my home. We don't have an office down here. I get 1,000 phone calls. I get many emails. And with the event of Facebook, I'm getting a lot of messages on Facebook. But it's about public service. It's about helping people. Because at the end of the day, when they call you, that's the most important thing in the world to them. And that's the thing that I enjoy most about this job. And that's helping individuals.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to the folks who were here on this stage. I believe that the panelists asked some great questions. I believe both candidates were very cordial to one another. I believe that we have seen our government in action, and I think that anybody to say that not finding out what it takes to vote is passing an opportunity by to have your voice heard. In this country, we have something a lot of people have lived and died for, and that is the ability to get out there and vote for you who think this gentleman is the right candidate or this gentleman is the right candidate. It's very important that your voice be heard. Now, with that said, I do want to take an opportunity to ask everyone here on the stage. We'll start with those who have asked the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, do you believe you were treated fairly in this debate process?
Yes, of course.
And candidates, do you believe you were both treated fairly in this debate process? All right. We want to take this opportunity to thank everyone here in attendance, everyone who is at home, and say God bless, have a safe trip home, and remember November 8th is your opportunity to vote your conscience. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.